current or ex-theme park employees, what are some dirty secrets that most people don't know about? The park I worked at, the games were easier to win earlier in the day so that people would carry around the giant prizes and entice other people to play. Don't ever go in the ball pits. Little kids track all sorts of food and grime into the pit and regularly pee in there since they confuse it for a pool. The balls are only cleaned once a week. And even then they are just put in a net bag and hosed off. You just keep spraying until the water stops coming off ground. They are then air dried and not sanitized in any way. You just keep spraying until the water stops coming off ground. Former Six Flags employee. My park is the safest in the country because we call the rides down for rain. For vomit. For lost items. They could be obstructing the track. So if a ride is down, it's probably not for a mechanical reason. We even pulled an emergency stop while I was being trained on one roller coaster because a military official lost his military ID and was threatening my boss if we didn't go get it for him. If people knew how small that issue was, they'd be furious that we stopped the ride. I could individually control the speed of your go-kart. So if you were a dick to me, you were going to lose every race you were in. My friend in high school used to work at Hershey Park, and one day we went together. When we ordered lunch, I was just planning on asking for a cup of water with my meal so I didn't have to pay an extra $5. My friend told me to ask the cashier for a cup of magic water instead of just a cup of water. I trusted this friend, so I did what she said. When I received my cup of magic water, I took a sip and to my surprise it was Sprite. So I got a free cup of Sprite with my meal that day. Worked a churro cart next to a large pond in the park. At night it was impossible to keep the bugs out of the cinnamon and sugar bin. About 8 years ago, I managed a whitewater rafting ride, the big donut tubes that can sit 6 people, as a side job while in college. One day, the water filter broke down. The managers kept the ride running for over 2 weeks anyway. The water smelled so bad and turned dark green-brown. The inside of the raft smelled like a month-old porta potty. We were instructed to tell guests the water filter was broken but the water was clean. Which I'm pretty sure was a lie. Thankfully, being a shift leader, I didn't need to go anywhere near the water. But I felt bad for my employees and the guests who rode despite looking obviously disgusted by the smell. A lot of scary, dangerous rides are operated by stupid teens. Source: a stupid 16-year-old. Vomit, with no visible blood, is either cleaned up with a sawdust-like material to soak up the liquid and then swept into a dustbin or hosed off with a garden hose. The coaster seat or table is usually not sanitized or anything. So, you are sitting in dried vomit particles. My place used to say that any change cash lost on a ride was donated to charity. If they meant the charity of their employees' pockets, then they weren't lying. Quarters were the good ones to find, since it was rarely bills. My aunt and uncle work for Disney World. Apparently when someone pukes on a ride, it's called in as a protein spill. We used to crank up the amount of salt in the fries and then build a soda stall next to it. Next we'd remove some of the paths to trap guests in the salty fries expensive soda area. We made a killing. Most theme parks avoid paying overtime because they are considered seasonal. Therefore they understaff and get employees to work 60 hours. Usually at less than stellar pay rates. That's completely legal though. As far as shady tea, the instances are few and far between because parks are cash cows and no one wants to FCK that up. At the water park I worked at, the pools had their pH levels checked constantly. 2 people's job was to wall around all day and continuously check the levels. The food is shitty at these places. But that is not a dirty little secret. I worked at the Fudgery in a Six Flags. It's technically a part of retail. So none of the employees have any food safety training. Which means the back is never cleaned properly, it had mold, and kids don't get new gloves after handling disgusting, sweaty money. I used to be in management for a small family-owned park in Utah. They hire lots of 14 and 15-year-old kids because they own a few cattle. Not exactly sure how this works, but I think technically they are considered farm hands, which allows them to work at a younger age than the usual 16. Since this place is one of the only employers in Utah to do this, they hire tons of the youngs. Disney has an underground tunnel system for workers in different areas of the park to move around, so you don't see people dressed up from any other area out of their place. Also, there's a color Disney uses in their parks that is the least detectable shade of green, so trash cans and stuff are basically hidden in plain sight. Former ride op who worked multiple major level parks. How often the ride crew members are hungover, possibly still drunk. You work with the same people day in and day out. You become family. Especially at the age when you don't have much responsibility other than gas in the car. All you're doing is partying. Park closes 10 PM. By 11 PM you're shotgunning beers in your manager's backyard while the new kid is doing backflips off the roof of the house into the pool. That goes till 4 to 5 AM and you all have to be at work at 9:30 AM. Good times. Also, the inter-park relationships. MTV should do a reality show on working at an amusement park. The amount of drama. Fantasyland. Germany, the Africans were all sent to work on the Black Mamba ride. Kinda embarrassing. Every morning the wave pool is crystal clear. When it's not, it's because of piss, sunblock, dirt, etc. I worked at Worlds of Fun. I passed all ride operating tests without actually being at the ride itself or even seeing the panel. Since I passed the tests, I could then operate any of the rides at any point during the season, even though I realistically did not know any of the rides. Disney World has bed bugs. There's an actual code for them. I want to remember code 206, maybe? And they've been found all over the resort rooms. Makes sense, but also on the rides. Epcot is especially bad for bed bugs. The code is 724. Listen for context. Have a magical day is frequently used as go FCK yourself. How gross the food is. Overpriced and frozen. Dropped on the floor and picked up with unwashed hands. I worked in the in-park subway, and my manager made me wash off moldy tomatoes to serve to customers because she forgot to order fresh food. We're officially out of bought license plates. Attention Marge Simpson, your son has been arrested. Attention Marge Simpson, we have also arrested your older, balder, fatter son. Kids poop in the wave pool constantly. All we do is clear it out for 10 minutes and then let people back in. Former park ops at a Florida theme park here. My job was to do custodial work in the bathroom and pathways, sweep, take out trash, hose, etc. Of my designated section while occasionally getting assigned theater duty. That $15 meal that you just paid for in the restaurant? Yeah. The employees can get all of that for $2 or $3. Just depends on the items. Theme park food is definitely way overpriced for guests. If you complain enough, you'll get what you want. And the theater hits capacity. I can't let anyone in. You can give me a sob story about how you traveled all the way from Antarctica for all I care. The second that you mention wanting to talk to a supervisor, I have to get them. 9/10 times my supervisor will let you through the show no problem. Just to keep you happy. I, on the other hand, will be slightly annoyed, but that's how things work in theme parks. There are plainclothes security officers walking around the whole entire park. You probably don't even notice. Please think twice before doing anything stupid, like having sex on the Sky Ride. Guy at a chicken tendies restaurant in the theme park was a farmer hick. Liked to do stupid pranks. Turnover was high, so a manager was 16 yo. Basically kids run them parks. Anyway. Wanted to fry his boot in the deep fryer to see what would happen. Boot was caked in couch tea. He dropped it in. At this time a customer was bitching about not getting his french fries. Said I didn't pay $47 to come in this park and stand in a line all day. This was about 17 years ago now. Anyway. Hick farmer was getting annoyed with trying to tong his boot out of the fryer. Gets annoyed at the customer and throws the fries down. Fry basket right over the tea-caked boot. Cooked until golden brown and served up to the customer. That was my first day working at the park and my last day in food services. Forever. To this day. If I'm ever dragged to the park for whatever reason I always avoid that chicken restaurant. I very briefly worked at a theme park in southern Indiana. I was training to be a ride operator in the little kids section. Canoe Pond was my area. It was actually a really good park and there weren't a ton of things I saw in my short time there that could be considered a dirty secret. The biggest scandal was that the performers of stage shows, who would have to perform no matter what, would leave dirty lines if no one was there, even though you could kind of hear them from outside the performing area. There were also lots of concern about the Thanksgiving meals being really old. Because no one was buying them. I worked at Disney World and at Universal. I wish I had dirt to share. But both companies were on the up and up and treated guests with care and provided workers safe environments in which to do their jobs. What I can share for those interested. Mangers get paid very little. But stay on for the love of job. People in charge of rides instantly hate anyone who stands up when they're clearly not supposed to. You ruin our days by doing so. Jackasses. Blink twice if Mickey is holding a gun to you. I worked for an amusement park in Ohio for 2 summers and the worst things I've seen are for the foods department. I personally watched a box of frozen fries for one of the food stands fall off a pallet, get semi-crushed by the forklift tire, get thrown back into the pallets to be served. They also had their entire food warehouse get closed down for a better part of the summer because of a bird infestation. The company salvaged what they could and threw it into refrigerated trailers to be served from. The summers I worked there were great. Exhausting and probably borderline illegal for the open-close shifts. They had people working going from 7-8 am to maybe 12 am or later. I wouldn't give up the friends I made there, but it could have definitely been better. We don't get paid overtime. We can work anywhere from 12 to 16 hours a day. And there's a special exception in the US labor code that says that theme park employees don't need to be paid overtime if they're a seasonal employee. And it just so happens that theme parks mostly hire seasonal employees. Chew on that for your next visit to a theme park north of the Mason-Dixon line. Beyond that, here's a tip. If it's a seasonal park, and they are looking to hire, for the love of God, do not apply at the start of the season. They'll tell you that there are more benefits. But if it's at the start of a season, they're understaffed. Which means you work double shifts. An employee in the park collapsed in early May after being on his feet for over 10 hours straight. Worked at a haunted house in one of the Cedar Fair amusement parks. Actors get beaten the FCK up on the regular. Part of it is fight or flight responses. Which is fine. The other part is just assholes. We usually have a spotter who wanders outside the house itself and passes along word of any unsavory guests or management on their way in. As for the park itself, the most notable thing I can think of was the preferential treatment. Anyone who was a family member, friend of high-end staff got in free. Got to go to the front of lines. Etc. Or investors lol. If there was a time in which a guest at an hour ride was hanging from the ride, the protocol is to keep the ride up, and if they fall and die, they die. The fall would be around 50 feet or so. Edit. Also, there was a situation with a manager that let a kid that was too short to go on our ride on because the parents got angry enough and threatened to sue. When they got down to the loading area, the workers were instructed specifically not to measure the kid. Even after 3 different employees said this kid wasn't tall enough. Former janitor. Some parents don't give a FCK where they leave dirty diapers. Disney cares so much more about guests than cast. I had a good experience with the company. But I remember a time I told them I would get injured doing X thing. They made me do it anyway and didn't care until I sliced open my leg and my costume in front of guests. The tilt-a-whirl is slightly reclined when seated, so all your change, and phone possibly, will fall out of your pocket. Specifically check your seat after this ride. If I had $1 for every time someone lost money out of TH. Wait, I do have $1 for every time. Quite a bit, even ignoring the markups. Even if they gave a prize every time you played a dumb game, the park still wins. Semicolon. Let's see. Many of the people who you really would hope are mature adults and aren't drunk high. Full stop. Full stop. Well, are 16-year-old stoners. Full stop. Full stop. Full stop. They also live a very exciting life that makes annoying sitcoms seem reasonable. Guess who Jenny from X Roller Coaster was banging behind the fry stand? Full stop. Full stop. Full stop. I assure you I don't care, but you will tell me anyway. Many people are massively overworked. Never mess with ride ops. Safety is always number one, and I will kick you out of the park if you're threatening someone's safety, including your own. Listen to all the instructions even if you don't agree, because it's there to prevent you from being hurt. Was at Six Flags in NJ a few years ago where a guy was listening to music or WE on his phone. Ride op person said to take the headphones off, so he did. But the second they started climbing the hill, he put them back in. You could see it from the line, didn't even need cameras. The ride op girl looks so giddy to kick him out of the park. I worked as a rides operator at Six Flags when I was 16. Most days they had me working 10-hour shifts. Some rides, not the coasters. There is only one attendant there, so in some cases it's very easy to screw up and forget something important. The park I used to work at is considered farmland for tax purposes. I worked at a traveling dinosaur themed carnival when it came through during college. I was in charge of one of the bounce houses. The generator constantly went out, causing it to deflate with kids inside. This was a large bounce house and a child could easily have been smothered. Once a child bled all over the inside. I mean, it was everywhere. All they did was clean up what was visible from the outside and told me to open the ride back up. The generator caught the bounce house on fire at the end of the day once. The next day it was patched really poorly and the generator was still in the same spot. My friend started her period but wasn't given a break to go take care of it. So she bled through her clothes for 6 hours. When I brought up the issue of safety too many times, I was fired. I worked at the Washington State Fair at the Fisher Fair scones booth. One day we opened up a new bag of scone mix. Totally normal, we went through several bags a day. As soon as I opened it up, I saw some type of big bugs crawling around in the mix. Looked like a mix between a cockroach and a junebug. They were in several bags and I took them all to my manager, who looked inside a bag and said we still needed to use them because it was wasteful and would lose money if we threw them out. Made scones with those bags with bugs. People are obsessed with these scones and come by dozens at a time. Several people have died on the roller coaster. They just packed it up and moved it somewhere else when it got a bad name. I worked the grand opening of the place they moved this roller coaster to. I recognized it as being the same one that was at a previous park I used to go to that no one wanted to ride anymore because a few people died on it. They let the laborers that built the thing ride the rides after opening day. One of them came up to me and said, "Hey, my friend is afraid to ride that roller coaster. And he built the thing." What? How can he be afraid of heights? I saw him walking around on those tracks without a harness. No. He's not afraid of heights. He just knows how shitty it is. Years later, the park was in the news for, yep, someone dying again on that roller coaster. It must be the 4th or 5th person thus far. Which one? So I know to avoid it. I used to operate a roller coaster when I worked for an amusement park one summer. You'll be amazed at how much loose change accumulates under the rubber pads on roller coaster seats. During closing time, we'd clean up for the day and then stuff our pockets with as much coinage as we could carry. Grounds parties are the best parties. The basketball games aren't rigged. You'll just really f***ing suck at basketball. IDK if this counts, but I used to work at Red Rocks Amphitheater and guess what? Lots of people have died there. Usually 1-3 every summer. People overdose at concerts. Trip and crack their heads on the stairs. Fall trying to illegally climb the rocks. Etc. Not really an answer to your question. But I just got back from Six Flags. $80 to get in. $11 dry room temperature burger. $5 for 8 stale chocolate covered pretzels. And $5 for a Powerade. Theme parks are trash. I'll probably never go again. This is why it was so cool when I worked there. Free admission and 15% discount on everything. Backstage cafeteria had $5 burgers and fries, which were probably better than the food in the park. IDK though I don't eat there, and I was making $9 an hour. Minimum wage in my state is only $7.